Talk. I'm your host, Chaim Levy. This is episode 5 entitled I Speak Nice to Myself. So, in this episode, we're going to cover a few points. One is, what is the Bible's perspective? What is the Torah's perspective on self-talk, both negative and positive? Next, we're going to discuss some examples of negative self-talk, where it might come from, give some examples of positive self-talk, and how to transform a tool that's actually going to help us transform any negative form of self-talk into positive. Okay, so let's get on our way. Firstly, let's understand the significance of self-talk, both positive and negative. So let's understand the significance of speech. Now, if we want to understand this is not going to go into the whole path of understanding the rules and regulations of slander, of lashon hara, of speaking, bad about someone or something like that. This is more as it pertains to myself. How does my own speech affect me? Because I might say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. So it's just a word, like talk is cheap, right? We say talk is very cheap. Let's really see from a Bible's perspective how cheap, or is talk really considered to be cheap? Now, the Pele Yoetz, when he describes the rules of Shabbat, he discusses the following point. He asks the following question. I understand that we're supposed to rest on the seventh day, right? So we're supposed to rest from creating. So we don't paint, we don't cook, we don't light a fire, all kinds of things like that. But where do the rules of talking on Shabbat fall in? Like, there are rules of what you should be talking about on Saturday, on Shabbat. Like, what am I creating when I'm talking? Right? You can't talk about things that are, for example, all kinds of plans, and they say that if you plan business, you talk about business on Shabbat, so it doesn't have a sense of blessing. So what's the issue with talking about business on Shabbat, for example? So he says like this. He says, when God rested on the seventh day, when the Bible says that God rested on the seventh day, what did he rest from doing? What was he doing? Was he taking a chisel and chiseling Mount Rushmore? Was he painting the skies with a brush? I mean, what was he doing? When he rested from what? So the verse says in Genesis chapter 1 verse 3, and God said, let there be light, right? He used speech. When God created, he used the power of speech. That means eternally, speech are not just words. They're not just a coming together of noises, but rather they have an actual power. That is the tool. Those words are the tools that God used to create. So when we speak both positively or negatively, we're creating a sense of reality. We know that the person is a small universe. The universe expresses itself through you, through the individual. When you speak, and putting aside others, even to yourself, about yourself, you're creating a certain sense of reality, because that you're using the tool that God used, the same tool that God used to create. And King Solomon says in Mishlei, in Proverbs 18 verse 21, and life and death are in the hands of the tongue, right? Chaim v'mavet biyad halashon, both good and for bad. We have to, on a side note, completely not connected to this class, but once we're on the topic, a parent, a mother, a father has to be very careful if their kids get them upset and they say, words like, oh, you're killing me, or you're, all kinds of things like that. You're really driving me crazy. I just wish you would go away, and all those kind of things. Those are words. They have power. Okay? So let's translate self-esteem so we can understand where self-talk falls into. So in psychology, the term self-esteem is used to describe a person's overall sense of self-worth or personal value. How much do you appreciate and like yourself? Now, it involves a variety of beliefs about yourself, right? It's made up of a variety of things. For example, your appearance, the way you feel, and the way you appraise, the way you judge your appearance, the way you judge and you praise your beliefs, your emotions, the way you judge your behavior. That's composed of what? That's composed of the way you speak to yourself. So it's kind of like waiting in line. If you speak to yourself a certain way, that's how you see yourself. You see yourself a certain way, that's your self-esteem. Okay, so speaking to ourselves is how we judge ourselves, is how we appraise ourselves. That'll determine our self-esteem. And we'll get into a little bit negative self-esteem, positive self-esteem, negative self-talk, positive self-talk. So I would like to point out 4 types of categories of negative self-talk. First one is called, and see if any of these kind of fall into your lap. Personalizing. What does that mean? You blame yourself solely when things go wrong. Something goes wrong, so for some reason you see it as this is all my fault, and you're ready to take on the full yoke of responsibility. Now, it's not just from a financial perspective, it's from an emotional perspective. It could be in a marriage, like your husband or your wife's negative mood is all your fault and you have to solve it. That's a big weight. Or a child, his parents are fighting and the child saying, I have to do something about this, I'm the only one. That's this is because of me. It's all because of me. It's if I would have been different, this would have been different. Okay, that's called personalizing. Polarizing means you see things only as good or bad. There's no gray areas or room for middle ground. Now, the middle ground is a very important place to be, because if we just see things as good or bad, then life becomes very toxic. You're either ecstatic and happy and singing the happy song, or you're sad and you're upset and negative because nothing's working out. But life is really not like that. Relationships, finances, children, whatever it is, the majority of the time we spend in a gray area on the journey towards whatever side we're going towards. So polarizing is what we tell ourselves, it's either all good or all bad. Magnifying is another form of negative self-talk where we only focus on the bad. You don't even see the good. You dismiss any good or positive, right? That last one is called catastrophizing, meaning not you expect the worst. You just have this expectation that nothing for me is going to work out, nothing's going to pan out. And again, it could be because of experiences. If someone's dating and they're not married when they think they would have liked to have been married, right? So they just get into this trend of like, yeah, I'll go out, but it's not going to work out anyway, or something to that extent. Now, this could be, the reason we talk to ourselves this way could be for a variety of reasons. Okay, there's a variety of reasons, why this could be. One of them is because we have this self-talk to ourselves that I'm just going to cite a few. Bear with me on the list part, but we kind of have this negative self-talk that we believe that others are better than us. Okay, if for example we find it difficult in expressing our needs, okay, that is an outcome of negative self-talk. You're constantly focusing on your weaknesses. If you frequently experience feelings as shame, depression, or anxiety, and the word to focus on here is frequently. Like, everyone feels shame, depression, and anxiety. That's a normal part of life. But when it's frequent, then that's kind of testimony to low self-esteem, having a negative outlook on life. Or another one is an intense fear of failure. That comes from a low self-esteem. If a person has trouble accepting positive feedback, every time someone tries to praise you, you just brush it off. And that's, we'll have another class down the road discussing why that's false humility. That's not arrogance, meaning accepting feedback and positive feedback is not arrogance. Not accepting it is an expression of low self-esteem. You have trouble saying no, and that comes from lack of boundaries. That comes from a lack of self-value. You put others' needs way before your own on a constant basis. You become like a yes person, or you struggle with confidence, right? Those are all inclinations of a low self-esteem that then can lead us to the 4 examples of negative self-talk that we spoke about. So what can we do about it? And how do we, like we said, Chaim u'mavet biyad halashon, all right, as King Solomon said, life and death are in the hands of the tongue. What can we actually do about it? And why does it even make sense to do something about it? The first part is, like we said, words, right, are a powerful creative tool that God used. God chose words to create the universe. So we can choose words to create our own universe, our own selves. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch points out that in Hebrew, right, words have a significance. The way they're spelled and written, daber and davar, both have the same letters. They both, daber is to speak and davar is object, because when you speak, you're creating an object. You're creating an actual reality. Okay? And furthermore, we have to understand that, and it's another lengthy topic, but the idea behind it is, how could the Torah command you to have on emotions like love thy neighbor, don't be jealous, don't covet, right? What do you mean? I don't love my neighbor. Now what? I do covet. Now what? So don't, but I do. Okay, how does the Bible, how does the Torah give you all these emotional commandments? Like, you could tell me not to steal. Don't pick up my hand and steal something. But you can't tell me not to covet something. I want it. So the answer is, the commentators explain that our mind only has enough bandwidth to focus on one thought at a time. Okay? So if we want to train our mind to think positive, then we have to leverage that. We have to leverage that concept, which is, if we keep focusing on uplifting thoughts, you form a habit, you form a pathway that's created. And when a negative thought occurs, a negative self-thought occurs for one of the reasons that we explained, that we spoke about, then it's our responsibility to start thinking and stating the positive responses. Because what do those do? What does that do? Those affirmations actually get our brain to think a certain way and start affecting our self-talk, start affecting our self-appraisal, as we mentioned, and starts affecting our self-esteem. Okay, now let's give some examples of negative self-talk that we can turn into positive. Okay, I want to just give, like, a lot of times in people will just tell you like affirmations. No, I'm going to point out the negative and take it a step further. So one is, if I'll be saying to myself, I'll disappoint everyone if I change my mind, right? You want to change your mind about something. You want to make a decision that's different and contrary than what you might have said or something like that. What could you tell yourself that's positive? I have the power to change my mind. Others will understand. And the same is for boundaries. Like we mentioned, one of the flags that shows low self-esteem is if you don't have healthy boundaries. You don't have the capability to say no and set up your boundary. But if you tell yourself no, others will understand. I have the right and power to change my mind. That's a positive self-talk. Negative self-talk is, I failed and embarrassed myself. You tried something and you failed and you embarrassed yourself. The positive spin you should be telling yourself is, I'm proud of myself for even trying. That took courage. If you listen to episode 4, we discussed the idea that if you're putting yourself at risk, you should commend yourself. At risk, I mean you're taking steps, you're making moves in life that has a risk. You might fail. You're right, but you should at least be proud of yourself that you're not taking life in a passive way. You have courage. Another example is a negative form of self-talk is, I've never done this before. I'll be bad at it and I'm going to fail. The positive way to tell yourself in that situation is, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to learn from others and grow. There's something that I can take. You can use this in business, you can use it in relationships, you can use it in experiences. In every experience in life, you turn it into, this is an opportunity for me to learn. There's something here even from this person. There's something from this person for me to learn. Negative self-talk, another example, is there's just no way this is going to work. Positive self-affirmation, positive self-talk is, I can and I will give it my all and it will work. It will work to the best of the capability that God wants it to work. So we spoke about a few points, and just to kind of recap, we spoke about the idea of, why is speech important? We branched off a little bit about the power of speaking negatively about others, right? And that has an effect, but then we turned back into speaking about ourselves. We gave a definition to self-esteem and how self-talk is linked into it. Some categories of where negative self-talk comes in: personalizing, polarizing, magnifying, and catastrophizing. And then some examples of low self-esteem, the significance of positive self-talk, and how we can turn something that we would be saying negatively, and how turn it into and give it a positive spin. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. This is Chaim Levy. Excited for the next episode of Noise to Music.